that I must learn to take life's roses with its thorns. Please rise as you're willing and able for our next hymn, number 349, We Gather Together. This morning we are pleased to welcome Mrs. Judy Armstrong, who is very busy putting all of these sermons and ceremonies together as part of the worship committee. And I know she used to be part of a church that was much more strict in their doctrinal beliefs, but we are very thankful to have her here. So please join me in welcoming her.
Still need to bring it down. Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
As originally planned, I'm not supposed to be speaking today. I'm supposed to be Tom. Tom's supposed to be in the congregation. The worship committee had chosen acceptance as the theme for the month of August. The plan was to have today's speaker discuss acceptance from a Buddhist perspective. As an ordained Buddhist monk, he was eminently qualified to do so. But life happens. Things come up. Roles change, and one accepts. With my first lesson in acceptance agreeing to fill in this morning, under my belt, I thought I would explore the originally planned topic, where it might have taken us. My minimal exposure to Buddhist teaching and practice comes from the college semester in the philosophy of world religions and from sermons on Buddhist meditation that I've heard in this space. So I had some reading to do. It seems to me there are three main areas wherein the virtue of acceptance can lead to a fuller and more peaceful life. Self-acceptance, the acceptance of others, and acceptance of the events outside one's control. How can Buddhist teaching help with each of these? Two of the principles of Buddhist thought that lead to acceptance are, first, insight into the impermanence of all life, matter, and experiences. And the second is the idea of a middle way, refusing to accept a dualistic understanding of the world in terms of good, bad, light, dark, pleasure, pain, joy, sorrow. The law of impermanence, or constant change, can perhaps help us with self-acceptance. We tend to be self-critical, seeing all of our flaws, physical and behavioral. We can get stuck in negativity. But just as I am not the same person on the outside that I was as a child, neither am I the same in terms of emotional growth and understanding. Seeing the constant changes in myself make it easier to just accept what I am, who I am at this moment, allowing that I will continue to grow and change, hopefully learning from each experience. This principle can also help with the acceptance of others. If all existence is in flux, constantly changing, my negative encounter with you might just have happened at an inopportune time in your life. I can allow that it could be different next time. I can admit that you too are not constant, but ever-changing, and therefore withhold my judgment. There are many things that life throws at us beyond our control: illness, job loss, accidents, financial calamities, loss of a loved one. The concept of impermanence can help here too. The Buddha taught suffering is not inherent in a world of impermanence. Suffering arises when we cling. Pema Chodron, the first American woman to be a fully ordained Buddhist monk, put it this way: impermanence is a principle of harmony. When we don't struggle against it, we are in harmony with reality. She says that it's a matter of relaxing with the present moment, relaxing with hopelessness, relaxing with death, not resisting the fact that things end, that things pass, that things have no lasting substance, that everything is changing all the time. Or as my mother and your mother too probably said, this too will pass. And this approach may work with most of the trials in life that ultimately do pass. We just get through most of them. Say I'm sad. Just admitting that and allowing myself to feel the sadness without fear or worry that it may go on forever may actually help me to get past it with less pain. When I can relax and experience the sadness without the additional weight of negative thinking, the suffering is lessened. Of course, for each of us, the ultimate impermanence is our own mortality. I don't know how well I will deal with that at the moment it becomes clear that my time is getting short. But my mother gave me a beautiful example of relaxing and accepting. Some years back, after 3 days of invasive in-hospital testing to discover the cause of her weight loss, weakness, and fainting spells, she was told she had colon cancer. She looked at the doctor and the hospital social worker who had come to break the news. She paused momentarily and then spoke with calm determination. I've lived a good life, a long life. Everyone has to die of something, and it appears that I am going to die of cancer. I would like to be kept comfortable if that's possible, but no heroics, no surgery, no chemotherapy, no radiation. They explained that she could not be kept comfortable with the tumor in place where it was, so she consented to have the surgery and planned to then go home. For whatever reason, the sutures didn't hold, resulting in massive peritonitis that took them weeks to diagnose. After a second surgery to rinse her internal organs from the infection, place half a dozen draining tubes, Mom woke in recovery, and the surgeon was frank with her. He wasn't sure he got it all and didn't know if he should go in and repeat the procedure the next day just to be sure, or hope that the IV antibiotics would not be enough to knock out the rest. At her age, 86, he didn't know if she was more at risk from the infection or from a third major surgery in a short time. I stood at her bedside as she gave him her peaceful response. It doesn't matter to me. If it's my time to go, I'm okay with that. This is a teaching hospital, so do whatever you will learn the most from. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This was radical acceptance. Many of you met my mother when she was here with us this past winter. She's 99 now and still prepared to face whatever happens next. I'm convinced that relaxing with her diagnosis, free from worry, resistance, and struggle, willing to accept her own impermanence, made it easier for her body to fight the infection and heal. Ajahn Chah, the late Thai meditation master, said, if you let go a little, you'll have a little peace. If you let go a lot, you will have a lot of peace. If you let go completely, you will have complete peace. My mother has a lot of peace. The Buddhist philosophy of the middle way is also a pathway to acceptance. The idea is that we all have within us the roots of good and the roots of evil. We have a tendency for greed within us, but also the capacity for generosity. We can succumb to self-delusion, and we can have insights of wisdom. If we admit that we all have these roots within us, we can see ourselves more realistically. We will not blame ourselves for the undesirable traits or overly praise ourselves for our better natures. We can then come to acceptance. As Sister Enya Hema says, we are neither wonderful or terrible. Everyone is a human being with all of the potential and all of the obstruction. And if one can learn to love that human being, the one that is me, with all its faculties and tendencies, then one can love others radically, usefully, helpfully. If we are less judgmental with ourselves, we can be more understanding and accepting of others. In the early years of our marriage, Bernie and I were living in Spokane, Washington, where we were both taking college classes. There was a young man in one of my classes whom I found, for whatever reason that I can't even remember now, extremely annoying. One day, as my irritation with him was again mounting, I caught sight of the wedding band on his left hand. Then I looked at my own wedding band, and it struck me that Bernie knows me better than anyone and finds me lovable in spite of my irritating faults and shortcomings. This guy that grates so on my nerves is someone's beloved. This guy is seen by someone else in a totally different light. It gave me a new perspective, and my attitude changed to one of more acceptance, a willingness to cut him some slack. I probably only remember this incident because I have these insights so rarely. And again, like the wisdom of Sister Kima, she says, we need a light-hearted approach to our own difficulties and those of everyone else. If one has a sense of humor about oneself, it's much easier to love oneself properly and also easier to love everyone else. When I reflect on the Christian teachings of acceptance, what comes first to mind are these words from the Gospel of Luke. Can any of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your span of life? Consider the lilies of the field. You know the rest. It's pretty well known. The lilies don't toil or struggle or fret. They just are. They're beautiful. Acceptance is, in Christian thought, also a letting go of worry and the need for control. Many things in life are beyond our control. Often in the face of these, our reaction is not of one of acceptance, but to worry and stew. In preparing this talk, I read over a book of meditations by Kate Moorhead, an Episcopal priest. This is a portion of her reflection on worry and the lilies. Worry is nothing but a spinning of the wheels of the mind. It's an unproductive, unflattering waste of energy. Worrying is useless. I think that worry in me is a way of trying to remain in control, of putting the brakes on my life. Worries can go around and around, resolving nothing, expending energy, a meaningless dance of distraction. It's strange of Jesus to suggest that the antidote to worry lies in considering the simplest of things. A lily doesn't agonize over decisions. It simply exists without judgment or self-observation or consideration. A lily just is. It soaks in the sun and lives until the time it comes for it to die. Worrying does not add time to life, but rather robs us of it. When we worry, we're not fully awake. When we recognize that our thoughts are repeating themselves, when we go over and over the same problems, the same confusion or pain, we erase ourselves from the present moment, and we lose that moment. It will never return. She goes on to talk about what she learned from the experience of giving birth to her first child. She had fretted about all the things that could go wrong. But when the time came, no matter what the fears or the distractions that ran through her mind, her body kept doing exactly what it was supposed to do. She likened it to the rush of a river running its course. It came as a relief to cede control, let go of worry, and surrender to the experience of giving birth. Seems to be part of the American psyche to be in control. We like to think we are captains of our destiny. We speak of the pioneer spirit, the self-made man, and the like. We don't like it when there are matters in our life that we cannot control, and letting go can be difficult. Here I think that women have some advantage. Because we can get pregnant, we know that our very bodies will change in ways that we have no control over. We must just accept this as a matter of course. I remember with one pregnancy, one of my eyelids hung at half-mast. There was some nerve pressing on something, and that eye wouldn't open fully from the 6th month on. With a later pregnancy, I had swelling and had carpal tunnel, lost feeling in both of my hands. As pregnant women, we never know what smell in the air will suddenly cause us to lose our lunch, or what the heck happened to our ankles. One comes to accept that this is what it is, and it will pass. Women of my age and older generally learned another of life's lessons in accepting what is beyond our control. We were not generally the primary breadwinner of our families. So it was, whither thou goest, I will go. I've been the so-called trailing spouse in 7 interstate moves and 6 other moves. Sometimes it was a transfer, sometimes a complete change of employer. Where we would live and for how long has always been beyond my control. I learned the first time that I could be accepting and open to the new experiences that lay ahead in a new place, or I could be bitter and focus only on the loss of the familiar and the comfortable. Usually about the time I felt familiar and comfortable, it was time to move. In these past several years, as I've watched my father-in-law and my father in their final years, aging seemed to be more of a fight for them. A fight to admit they could no longer do what they used to do. A fight to give up the car keys when the time came. A fight to admit that they couldn't manage everything on their own and needed help. My mother and mother-in-law, on the other hand, knew they had never had control over the vicissitudes of life, and thus it was easier for them to be gracefully accepting of the changes that came with aging. And I don't pronounce this name right. This brings me to Reynold Niebuhr's Prayer for Serenity, Courage, and Wisdom. It begins, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. And what follows is the courage to change the things I must. These appear to be opposites, acting versus accepting. But when we look closer, they too point to a middle way, a balanced life at peace with what is. No doubt this is why it's come to be adopted as the prayer of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm very fortunate not to have a predisposition to alcoholism. There were many drunken Irish great-uncles in my family. But I do have a predisposition to overeating. I had grandparents on both sides whom we would term today morbidly obese. And one parent. And I seem to have inherited the tendency towards weight gain. My sister did not. I can be jealous, wallow in the unfairness of it all, or just accept what is. As a short person, I need to either eat less or exercise a lot more than the average person to maintain a normal weight. This will never not be the case, but I can still choose to act in a way that moves me towards better health. So it's possible to accept this about myself and still work to change the piece of it that I can. The two are not inconsistent. So what about acceptance of others in this context? I can't change you. But just to be at peace with you, I need to accept the you that is in this moment. That is not the same as allowing myself to be your doormat, given over to complete passivity. In his article, To Protect or Accept, a Buddhist Response to Negativity, Alan Crawford said, you can take whatever action feels authentic and appropriate in order to resolve the situation, but you try to do this from a place of acceptance, with a peaceful mind and a positive, wholesome intentions for the greater good of all concerned. This is particularly true in regards to our intimate relations in families. Whether it's between parent and child or between life partners, we're different, and that can cause tension. Most of the time, we learn acceptance of the differences. Our kids know which parent to approach in each situation. They figure us out pretty young. And partners, after the first romantic blush of new love is worn off, realize they are not in total harmony. Yet we accept our beloved. He's an introvert, I'm an extrovert. He's a morning person, I burn the midnight oil. And the way I see it in a disagreement, he's more likely to get defensive, while I'm more likely to blow things out of proportion and fear that this is going to be the beginning of the end. Between us, we find a balance and live at peace with the reality of who we both are, at least most of the time. But what about those relationships that are grossly out of balance, where one person is remote, deceitful, controlling, or abusive? What does acceptance of the other mean in this situation? Here is where acceptance of what I cannot change actually compels one to the second corollary, and acceptance that change is what I must have the courage to do. Before Bernie, I had a fairly brief first marriage. My husband turned out to be both abusive and controlling. I persisted in believing that I must faithfully live out my vows and accept that this was my lot in life. I had promised till death do us part. Nowadays, Catholics may divorce at the same rate of others in our culture, but I'd venture to guess there's more guilt in doing so. One day, in my despair, I slipped into the side chapel of my parish church. I sat there in silence, pondering my situation. It came to me that if there's a God, and if that God is anything like the loving Father of which Jesus spoke, that she could not desire for me to die young at the hands of an abuser, or for my son to grow up without a mother. If there's a God, a sacred presence or life force that is in essence love, then the most loving thing would be to accept that this marriage is harmful to all concerned and must end. The acceptance of this need for change did not come from that place of fear, anger, or even worry that I had been churning for some time, but from a place of peace with the reality of what was and a new hope for what could yet be. In my life, I recall this as a moment of insight and wisdom, and I admit I've had few of these. I by no means have a handle on this acceptance thing. I worry, I churn, I overthink almost everything. You should have been a fly on the wall watching me churn this out all week. I'm uncomfortable with change. Yet I can realistically say that I see myself gradually getting a little bit better at both. I'm nowhere near close to my mother's graceful acceptance of whatever life brings, including my own death. But she has 36 more years of experience with living than I have, so there's hope for me yet. In many faiths, this virtue of acceptance is held up as an ideal, a pathway to inner peace, peace with others, and peace within our natural world. Isn't that the ideal we Unitarian Universalists are espousing when we covenant to affirm and promote justice, equity, and compassion in human relations and acceptance of one another, and respect for the interdependent web of all existence, accepting that which is? Thank you.
Accepting that I'm too tall. Thank you, Judy. That was absolutely amazing. Please rise as you're willing and able and join me in our closing hymn, number 322. I think we're going to have to play this one through. This is a new one. New as of 16th century, so... but new to us. So Joanne, would you please play it through? And we're going to do verses 1, 2, and 5. Please join me now in reciting our mission statement as a demonstration of our fellowship, our support for one another, and our commitment to the wider community. we agree to provide a safe place to celebrate diversity, draw inspiration for living better lives, foster social and environmental justice, and compassionately support each other in our spiritual searches. Thank you to our musician, Joanne, to Marika for our chalice lighting, to our greeters, Dorothy and Elizabeth, and to all others who are helping today, and of course to Mrs. Judy Armstrong. The extinguishing of our chalice and our closing will be followed by a meditative postlude. Let us be at peace with our bodies and our minds. Let us return to ourselves and become wholly ourselves. Let us be aware of the source of being, common to us all and to all living things. Evoking the presence of the great compassion, let us fill our hearts with our own compassion towards ourselves and towards all living beings. Let us pray that we ourselves cease to be the cause of suffering to each other. With humility, with awareness of the existence of life, and of the sufferings that are going on around us, let us practice the establishment of peace in our hearts and on earth. Amen. As it is with the music, so should it be with our lives. Listen for the struggle, and then let go. Thank you.
How you doing there? Nice to see
As terrible as it is,
They all said they wanted
Somebody else will do it. First they said she just got to